Okay, today is October the 5th, 1983, and we're here in Alachua with Ms. Leatha Decoursey, Mr. Bill Watson, and we're going to be talking about the old days and how people learned to do what they do, what it was like living here in the old days, and also a little bit about how the town has changed, how the community's changed, and what sorts of things are going on today from Mrs. Decoursey's perspective.
Yeah.
The first thing I was interested in was, I know you do a lot of home remedies and took care of a lot of people. And what interests me is how you'd get started in that. Why would you choose that as something to do with your life, say in comparison to what other people do, just working?
It was an inheritance from my mother. She did that. I inherited that from my mother. She did that. She took herbs and different plants from the woods, and she would combine them together and boil them until it was just almost just the juice of whatever that was. And then she would go to the drugstore. I've never been to the drugstore to get nothing. My mother could go to the drugstore and get a prescription. She didn't know her name.
All right.
Couldn't read and write. But she could tell the doctor what she wanted.
What she wanted? Well, now, what we use at our house is we use the aloe if we get a sunburn, something like that.
Yeah,
is that the kind of thing we're talking about?
My mother, she used that. Now I got an aloe's produce. Now I use it for arthritis and rub with it, and then I take it. I got a tonic. I take aloe's tonic.
A tonic. Now, what would a tonic be useful for?
Arthritis.
For arthritis.
Digestive. Just most anything that swelling. First of the year, that foot was sore. I couldn't get to the shoe. And my granddaughter, she ran upon a lady that was selling. She got me about $12. And I've been taking it, and you see.
That's fine.
If we quit swelling.
But now, did your mother, I'm trying to figure out how you actually learned it. Did your mother teach you? Did she take you with her when she was taking care of folks?
No, she did it right in her home. Well, yeah, she took me with her when she was taking care of people. And she would show me. And, but, being young like I was, I never thought about nothing like that. My mother, she was a hard person to insult. She didn't take insults from people. It was according to the nature of it. You see, if you were sick, if you had an ailment, if you in some way was chronic and was ill and mean, she never talked back at you. I inherit that from her. I never talked back at a patient. When he gets so riled up and so, mad over nothing, I never get mad at him. Now I've had him to ask me. Austin Penley used to ask me, "Leatha, you don't ever get mad?" I said, "What for?" And they said, "Well, you don't never raise hell." I said, "No, what's the use? When you get there," I said, "What you get out of it?" "I don't know." I said, "Well, I guess I don't get nothing out of it, and I don't use it." No. He said, "Well, I just got to say damn sometime." I said, "Can't you say Lord have mercy?"
How would you compare?
Yeah, I reckon I could. He said, "Is you mad with me?" I said, "Mad with you? You sick? I ain't sick." He'd say, "I'm sick?" I said, "Yeah, you the one sick." I said, "If I'm going to get mad with you, I'm sicker than you are. And I wouldn't have the job." I don't mean no harm. I said, "I know you don't mean no harm. You can't get up, you can't do nothing, and you get aggravated. And you take it out on the closest person to you." I said, so you just jump right on me? I said, come on, my shoulder's broad enough to hold it.
How would you compare him with the Fishers and the Bush people that you work with?
Mr. Penley?
Right.
Well, he had a stroke 17th of February, 1960. 1960. And I started work with him 1960 in April. And they brought him from the hospital in April. I started working from the 4th week in April. And I worked with him from the 4th week in April in 1960 until the 3rd day, the 3rd week. Must have been the 4th week, 27th, about the 27th.
Mm-hmm.
27th of March. I worked with him, I stayed with him before his wife had stroke. He was in the bed, he was helpless around 6.5 years.
Oh, really?
Before she had a stroke. She was able to walk about, but she couldn't wait on him because she was real small, delicate, The children thought it'd be better for some to hire somebody to stay there with him around the clock to keep their mother, from. And so that was me. And I used to, in July, in 60. I worked from April till July, in the daytime. And then, 3rd week in July, his son-in-law and daughter, oldest daughter, Mary L. Welsh of High Spring, and Charles Welsh, they moved back home. See, they moved from High Spring up here with her mother when the father was so low. And the younger daughter, she lived in Ocala, Laverne Gray. And so when Mr. Charles moved back to High Spring, he was a railroad man. That called for me. There was nobody there but Ms. Penley and Mr. Penley. And so I began to work, stay there then, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Tell us a little bit about what exactly you would do for these folks.
I shaved him, bathed him, changed his beds, and prepared his meals, and fed him until he was able, to put his food in his mouth himself. Yeah, I did that 3 times a day. And
how did you take care of the rest of your family if you were over there?
Oh, I didn't have a family at that time.
They were all grown?
See, they was all grown. Everybody working, everybody, doing. I left home because in the daytime everybody was gone. There wasn't nobody there but me. And so, I got me a job that I could, I could be gone too.
Now, the other day you told us a little bit about people like that you took care of when they had like bed sores. You had a recipe for that. Could you maybe tell us about that?
I took care of my nephew, my niece, right there in the trail until she died. And she had a stroke. Then she had sugar, and they had to amputate one of her legs. And lying in the bed, and she reeled from under. In a hot weather, she began to, scold. And I just went out there beside the fence and got some elder bush and boiled it. And I bathed her with that elder water. When she died, her body was just as smooth as that cot. She didn't have a blister nowhere on And they amputated, when they amputated that leg, when they, took them things off it, I just made that nerve, keep it from breaking. It's so hot. And keep it from, scalding, because she had to wear a sock on it. That's all I did. And occasionally I'd put this Mexana powder.
What's that now?
Mexana powder. Long time ago they used to call it I'm trying to think of the name we used to call it. They call it, it's for heat. And scald, you can use it on babies when they scald.
Is it powder?
It's a powder just like Johnson baby powder, but it's got a different odor. It's don't have a bad odor, but it just don't have no perfume odor. And when anything that's not, plum roll, and just use that powder on it. And any kind of heat, prickle heat, it's Mexana powder for rash. You get it at the drugstore.
It seems to me what's important about what you did is that you, as you said, you had broad shoulders. You could take insults that people
Yeah.
And you really, I get a sense you enjoyed taking care of these people and seeing them. Now, I'm still wondering about why did you and your family become interested in that, and say the other sisters, other people in your family not get interested in that? Can you speculate on that?
My second daughter, she is in Phoenix, Arizona. She lives out there. And she does that now.
Oh, really?
You see, since she's gotten it, she don't like to tell her age, so I won't.
Well, did Aunt Dinah work like that?
No.
That's her
She
old
didn't
sister.
have the patience.
Right.
She couldn't take insults, and she couldn't be slighted. And you see, if you ain't ready, if you wearing these feelings on your cuff, don't go there. No, because it'll burden your heart so until make you study evil and think bad about people, and that's the thing you don't want to get in your own mind. Is to hear trash people hold it back in there.
Why don't we cut off for a second till that trash?
But sometimes it seems like they does it to
Distract them.
to cause you to not to enjoy, what you having. Now, in my lifetime and in my raising children, my children never did go nowhere before mealtime. If they went off somewhere, they would always be back home time enough to eat. And all my kids right now, they're grown. And you can't hardly they won't hardly eat off from home. They have a place to eat and they have a place to sleep. If they ain't to their sleeping place, they don't sleep good. And they'll do without eating. Rather than you say, well, we eat dinner, come on and have. No, I ain't. I've got to do so and so. I'll eat when I get through, or something like that.
Could you tell us a little bit about growing up around here? Where were you born and raised?
When I was 7 years old, this house, this place right here, where I'm sitting, was woods, worse than that, right out in front of the house there. All this was nothing but
timber.
And beyond that slat of woods there was a field. All that schoolhouse where the school used to be, all that over in there was watermelon farm. Clean back down here, the way it joined the Hale quarters used to be. That's what it was said. the Hales had some land way back down here. Right on the end of, you might say, the back of that watermelon farm. It was Mac McClellan watermelon farm. And all this road down here, that highway, that was a dirt road. And when I was, oh Lord, I guess I was 3 or 4 years old, I reckon. Our church, this church that's on the corner, it was up here at the cemetery. The church was right, the church was right in the cemetery yard. Right in the back of the church. And that was my grandparents' church in slavery time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So we speak about St. Matthew's.
St. Matthew?
St. Matthew's Church?
Now this church out here, Lord, you know what I'm talking about.
Right at the cemetery. Right.
I'm talking about this colored church out here.
Shallow?
Shiloh.
Right.
St. Matthew's. Come out from Shiloh. See, Shiloh ain't never moved. It's right there on the edge of the cemetery now.
Right.
In the back of the White People's Cemetery out there.
In Newmansville.
In Newmansville?
Newmansville. You go back there in the back, see the colored people, they get, when after freedom, they gave the colored people the low side. And then the white people, it's the upper side. That's way down, front of the highway. But way back in time, you see, there weren't no highways or roads or nothing. And of course, in slavery time, the black and the white buried together. See, in the back of that cemetery, I guess there's many white people and it was black.
That's what they say.
But
so your great-grandparents
yeah,
were with that church?
yes, right.
Or grandparents?
My grandparents bought this land. See, they worked and bought the land. They, the way the white people had the colored people to work and buy things back then. So after freedom, the colored people decided they wanted a little plot of their own. So my grandmother, my grandfather, they bought across the road. You see,
From the cemetery?
on the other side of the road, see, Newmansville.
Right.
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 And you see, St. Matthew's.
Right.
See, they moved out from Newmansville. But when you go to the back of the cemetery, you get over the fence. And you're in the white people's cemetery. It's just a wire fence. See? And so they bought that. The white people sold them this plot of land for burial. Then it was named St. Matthew's. But St. Matthew's sprung from Shiloh, old Shiloh.
Well, why did they make the move? I mean, why did they break away from Shallow?
Why they broke away from Shiloh? Well, you see, Shiloh ain't never moved.
They want
Shiloh is right there where Shiloh been. Cousin Pinky in her lifetime and Cousin Callie. All of them, you see, they parents was members of that church.
Oh, yeah.
My mother was converted there. It wasn't St. Matthew's when my mother was converted. It was old Shiloh, Newmansville, Old Town they called it. And of course, as people progressed, why? They tried to reach for something a little better, something a little more, and that's the way it come about.
Well, how did the move come down to where it is now from the cemetery?
Well,
Did we build it there, or we just move the boards? Or?
no. This has been since I could remember. That this church was built here. My grandmother was dead. But my grandfather, his son-in-laws, and a lot of the old patriarchs from up there, Isaac King, King Jones, and all of them, you see, they were church people. Well, They had to come from way out here and way out town and walk. See, they had no way to travel. They walked through the woods, through the path, and whatnot to get to church.
Right.
Raining, bad weather, night, or daytime, you see. They had no other way to get around. And they figured that they bring the church here, move the church here. Then Absalom McGill, Brisker Blue, Isaac King, King Jones, and there's some more that I don't remember. They were the leaders of the church. And at that time, it was there was a preacher at that church. They called, his name was Matthew. That's who the church is named for.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, named this St. Matthew.
Or after the pastor.
After this preacher.
Right.
Yeah, all the colored folks called him Bigfoot Matthews. I tell you who he was related to. Mm-hmm. He was this shoemaker.
Neil?
No. That was before your time.
Lundy?
No, this was Jake Adams and Bigfoot Matthews.
Now, what, they call him Bigfoot because he's related to a shoemaker, or they
No.
had big feet?
His brother was a shoemaker,
Uh-huh.
but his feet was so big,
Uh-huh.
he had to make, his brother made his shoes.
Uh-huh.
They called him Bigfoot. You know how
Right,
people nickname people, Bigfoot, old Bigfoot Matthews.
Uh-huh.
You remember Blind Henry Newberry?
No, I don't think I remember.
You never remember, you remember Suzanne?
I remember that name.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the name you called Blue.
Brisker.
He was related to us, wasn't he?
That was my grandfather. That was Mama's daddy.
Now, it's my understanding, grandmother mentioned that our family plot at the cemetery, he purchased this for the family
That's right.
when they first had
Oh,
the
really?
cemetery.
When right after freedom,
Right.
when the colored people decided, and the white people, to let the colored people have their own arrangements, you know. Well, then, they made a plan, set up a plan that the colored people, they let the colored people have that land.
Right.
See, they sold them that land. Maybe for $2 or $3, I don't know. Back then, you know, that was big money. And, of course, that was where they could get off to the south, you see. And Newlandsville, I don't know exactly where the white church was at that particular time. But I know St. Matthew's was right in the cemetery, where the cemetery is now.
Hmm.
And they bought this land and to put a church on.
Mm-hmm.
That was the purpose. And I guess the place was so big, or maybe it wasn't so big, I don't know. They decided that it was so much land back there. It was right in the back of the old church house. The old church house was a log building, a log building. I remember.
You went to church?
I remember the log church. I remember those logs. And I don't remember very much about it. And, I can remember the benches. How they were. It wasn't nothing like what we have now.
How so? How were they made?
They were made, they were homemade, and there was the ones that was in the back of the church, didn't have no back, you see. It was just a straight bench, and you just sit like this. Usually, the children and the people what wasn't going to participate in the services, you see, they sat, that was they, and those that had those bows across the back, you know, those was the up front benches. But it was all made out of rough pine, you know, it didn't have no dress lumber. It was just all rough pine.
Now, when I was...
And you scrubbed them
You
with
scrubbed
potash, sand,
After service or during the week?
But that's the way you kept your church clean.
Uh-huh.
You scrubbed it with potash, lye, and sand, and you scrubbed it until those boards, rough lumber, they're full of splinters. Mm-hmm. Well, you use it, and they had sharp knots. Like a piece of board about that wide, about that long, and it was about that thick, and holes was rolled in it. You take shucks out the bond and twist the end of it and pull it through them holes good and tight, and let the rough part of the butt end of the shuck be to the bottom. And you put that potash and that sand on them old rough floors, and when you scrub them enough times, those boards would be just as slick and smooth as those out there on that porch. You couldn't tell it,
It's like a big brush, huh?
That's right. That's right. And of course, that's the way the people had to make do, because they had nothing. There was nothing on the market. You couldn't go to a store and buy them all.
How did you go to church at night, though? What about lights and all that?
Lights. We had lamps on the wall. These little lamps what you hook upside the wall, and with the little silver things in the back of it.
Oh, yeah.
And the reflection from that silver, it helped to give light. And that's the light we had.
Oh,
And they had one on the pulpit. There was a lamp sitting on this side and a lamp sitting on this end. And of course it gave, when they had those reflection on them. And that give light right down the Bible. Anybody could read. There weren't many people could. But they'd say something.
Now, do you remember much about your grandfather, Briscoe?
Yeah.
What kind of man was he?
He was a short man. And an axeman.
An axeman?
An axeman. That man could use an axe. He split rails and cut wood for a living. When he was 90 years old, he took my brother and learned him how to pick out pine trees. That was good real trees. And those that were split easy. Yeah. And he'd pick out, people didn't have no shingle mills. They had something they called a froe.
A froe? Yeah.
A froe. All right, you saw the tree down. You cut it up in length. You own it. And then you take that froe. And then you start to crack him. You put your wedge in. You put your blood in. Then you made your mold out of hickory. Cut on your green hickory. Cut the handle out on it and leave the butt end of it big. That was the hammer part. And they drive them in there, and they ride bolts. When they start that piece of wood to split, they had no trouble in gauging how thick they wanted. Then each bolt, my husband could ride bolts. Oh, he could take a furrow and ride bolts. You'd think it was shingles. Yeah. And that's the way they got the tops for the house. There was no tin, there was no roofing, there was nothing like that. You got everything. When you put up a building, you build it. Everything about it came out those pines. And when I was a kid growing up, there was pine trees right there where we were living at. You couldn't reach around. It was so big. And tall, the wood looked like it was almost reaching the sky. Of course, I was so little then. It looked taller then than it really was.
Now, did your grandfather ever talk about slavery days?
Oh,
and coming to freedom? Remember those stories about that?
Yes, I was 11 years old. He named me.
Oh, he named you.
My name come to him. He had a vision before I was born. And he told me this many times. And it was a picture. He told my mother before I was born that this baby's going to be a girl. And she's going to be very much a lady. And he said, I wants to name, I ain't never named one of your children, but I wants to name them. And he said the name came to him in a vision. Leatha. I've never been called nothing else but Leatha. Yeah. Never been called nothing but Leatha. I was just Leatha.
So he just heard the name and
he dreamt the name, he said, and dreamt the girl that my mother was going to have. And when I was born, the 7th of August, my mother said, when he looked at me, he told her, said, well, we're going to call her name Leatha. Then because she's going to be a lady someday.
Where did he live in Alachua County? Where did he live?
All over Alachua County.
Did at one time he live out near Prairie? Was that the one that stayed on Prairie?
No, I guess he did, for I know it. He lived. There used to be a hammer. When I was a kid, we used to go out there and my sister used to go out there and gather moss at a certain time of year. That's the way we had beds. We had moss mattress beds.
Oh, really?
We get the moss and
Cure it?
procure it.
Dry it out in the sun? Or?
No, you had to water it down.
We gather that moss green, and pack it down. And all those didn't have running water, you know. All those dishwater and the water you take a bath in, just throw it out there on that moss pile. And that moss would go through a heat. And then it would, that's what I said it was, because it was so nasty looking. I said it rotted. But all of the refuse part of that moss would rot off. And then it wouldn't be nothing but black. Well, we had to take that then and hang it on fences and on bushes, whatever we could find to hang it on, and let it dry. When it dry, you take it and pull it apart like that, and get all the trash should come out of it. And it'd be just like black hair.
Like hair,
And then you stuff your mattress with that.
You remember we used to go to the cemetery to pull moss?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we would come home and cure it out over a period of time. Then moss.
Well, you see, that's after we have plenty of water. You see it right over there in that yard there. My sister had a moss pit dug out and filled that pit up with moss, throw a little dirt over it, and all the water, all the dirty water and everything just poured right out there in that corner in that pit.
Plus
on that moss.
It was the neighborhood's bait bed too.
Yeah.
All the worms would come under there.
Yeah.
So that you remember that from your childhood?
Oh yes.
Yeah, you remember when Sister killed moss,
we used to go. In fact, everybody had a moss bed because at a certain time of year we had the Iron Man would come around, man buying junk iron, and the moss man would come around. So that was a little money coming in all the time.
Oh, in the winter time.
Now, what would the moss man do with the moss?
They would sell it to the mattress factories.
Moss factory in Gainesville.
And furniture. You can find old furniture with like
moss.
Moss. It's actually moss.
Automobile seats.
Yeah, they put it in all
so just everybody had a little.
Well, everybody, a little source of income, and of course we would sheet this up just like they do tobacco. And we had an old building in the back of the house, like a barn that we'd call a crib, and we'd stack it in these big burlap sheets. And when the moss man came, of course, we didn't have any notice of when he was coming, but we had a load for him, and he'd weigh it out and pay us whatever right then. Yeah, so I remember that quite well.
5, 6. Well, I knew Lundy, Alec Lundy, his granddad. You know, he raised all them grandchildren out there in Negro. And he took them children, and he gathered moss, and he bought automobile. They bought their home, paid for their home, all from moss.
Right.
And even Rebecca's husband, paid him. When I lived out there, able to take his wife and kids and his wagon and go into Moss Woods this time of year and get loads and loads of more burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And they had their own home and had their own horses and the wagons and things, you know. And they that was money. Yeah.
Now,
People lived this time of the year.
Yeah.
After the farming was all over with, you know, it ain't been all too long since people began right in here to plant them beans. Cucumbers, they had a little patch, but they didn't have fields like they have now. But this, when the cotton went out, when the cotton went down, and the tobacco come in, see, it took over the cotton space. Well, tobacco, and then they found out that right in here, Central Florida, was a good place to grow, you know, vegetables. Mm-hmm. Then people began to plant beans. And then they began to plant fields of cucumbers. Watermelons and cotton used to be the money. Mm. Now, colored people, hardly when I was growing up, colored people didn't plant watermelons. White people didn't allow colored people to have them. No, you didn't have no watermelon farm, not for sale. You worked in white folks' watermelon.
But people probably grew and gave them to their friends, right?
Oh, yeah, you could have your watermelon patch. Yeah. But you weren't growing no melons for market because you didn't have no land. And of course, if you didn't have land, you couldn't grow watermelons. You grow some in your garden or your little patch around your house.
There were some colored people here that had land, right? Had big farms back in those days?
No, they didn't have no big farms. They had the plots of land. Mm-hmm. Now the hills up on the hill, they were 4 pounds. Mm-hmm. I guess it come through in slavery time. I don't know. But anyway, they had some land. And after the white people possessed all this other land, you know, all this land what this house is sitting on. There's nothing, all of this is homestead land. You see. People a long time ago, right after slavery time, you come out here and clean up your place, and much as you clean up, you see, you work it. It didn't cost you a thing to work it. You work it so many years, and get it cleared up, and get it in shape. Well, then you'd you go to the courthouse and you get a deed. Well, see, that was your land. Now, of course, the colored people, you know, there wasn't any knowledge of that at that time because there was very few colored people could read and write. And they knew to work, and they knew to how to, you know, provide for the family and things like that. But other than that, above that, well, nobody was interested in it because there was nothing in it. They were used to nothing but working. And somebody else give them, you know, prepare everything. Because I remember when people used to, when you farmed for a white person, you lived on their place. All right, you got a bushel of corn to take to the mill on Saturday. And you got so much salt. You get salt every 6 months. I remember walking to the kerosene. The farmer always had a big kerosene tank. And all of his hands, that's the way they got the kerosene. Kerosene on but 5 cents a quart. That's all. And so when you got people living out on the farms and things, well, when they got ready for salt, they had to go to the mill once a week. And they have grits in the mill ground. Well, people used to order flour in barrels, you remember. Y'all don't remember that. I remember. You hear them talk about it. Yeah. And wooden barrels would be flour. All right, when you went to the store, they got a paper sack. If you want a quarter's worth of flour, that man would dip you up a quarter's worth of flour into a paper sack. And of course that was a paper sack about like this. And you get a quarter's worth of grits, and that was enough month's supply almost. Great big old paper sack full. I went right down here in Alachua and bought a week's grocery with $1.50. Now it sounds impossible, but I did it. I got bacon, I got flour, I got coffee, I got grits, I got rice, I got sugar, and my grandfather always used condensed milk in his coffee. He didn't use cream, condensed milk. Yeah, once in a while we'd have to get a can of condensed milk. My mother would open the can of condensed milk, pour it in a glass jar, and then put the top on. Didn't have no refrigerators in an icebox. And that milk would stay right there. As long as you kept it, when you get some out, you just close it back.
Tell us about back then your favorite meals, or what you would have for Christmas or birthday. What would your mother prepare as far as, or when you had a family reunion, what kind of food would people bring?
Lord, the tater pies, the pumpkin pies, and they canned up in fruit season. Yeah. They canned pears, they canned peaches, they canned plums. My mother used to make plum pudding. Yeah, they would get these plums in the spring of the year. We'd get them by the sackful. Mama, she'd set up, I didn't know what she's doing, and she'd make them things, some of them, she'd take the pits out of them. I noticed that. She'd take the pits out of some of them, and that's what she would make the pudding, the plum pudding out of them. Now, when she make just to preserve the eat, she would just, let the pits stand. And then when you eat it, well, you had to spit out the seeds.
What was
when you put it on bread, you see, you just rip the seeds off and get the goodie. Yeah.
What did the children expect for Christmas? Christmas.
Well, what I expected for Christmas, my prized Christmas present, I never will forget it. My second sister, she went and did the shopping, and I wanted a doll baby. And that was when I was 8 years old. I got a doll baby, and the doll baby was about like that. I just loved the doll baby so well. It's a shame, but she didn't live until sundown Christmas. The head was off. And I cried so until my oldest sister, Sister Dinah, took some twine thread. My mother used to tack quilts, tack comforts, she called it.
Right.
Took a tacking needle, some of that tacking thread. You see, the body of the doll was nothing but some thin yellow horseman, see, I like to call it, stuffed with sawdust. And that head was just set up on there. And I played that girl so, honey, I played her Christmas Day. I got up Christmas morning and found that doll in my sack. One orange, one apple, one banana. And a stick of peppermint candy. That was in my stocking. Everybody hung up the stocking at Christmas time. And that's what they got. Each man's things was in his own stocking. Maybe some them old English walnuts. No, them old hard, they call them nigger toes. And I don't know what, them old hard things.
Brazil nuts.
Brazil nuts, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we call them nigger toes. That's all I ever know.
I grew up on with that same thing.
And we enjoyed that. And us kids would have some out of Christmas. Nobody got but one apple and one orange, one banana. And you know, some of us would have some of that stuff on New Year's. Oh, we would meet up there, all that stuff for that one day. No, we had to save it because that was something that Santa Claus had brought. And he wouldn't be back no more until next Christmas. And we just hung on to that thing as long as we could. My brother, I remember my mother used to, you know these things they call juice water? Used to get them right down there to Harris's stove, Bishop Harris's stove, for a nickel apiece. And that's what my brother, when he grew up to work, that was his pill, a juice water. Oh, and oh, he drank.
When I was a child, I remember you especially, and grandmother, walking around with the big sheet. Maybe it was laundry on your head, just walking.
Sure.
Perfectly balanced. Where were you going? What was all that? What was that?
We had to tote the clothes to the water. Wherever the water was, it didn't make no difference.
Where was the water from this house? Now, how far away?
Oh, there was a pump here.
There was a cross. Well, after this house was built, there was a pump over there in that yard. Well, that served all this, right in here, all this neighborhood. People from across the highway even come and got water at that pump. But now, when I was a kid, there was a pump cross over yonder, cross in that field in front of St. Matthew's Church. And a lot of people. And then down the road, as you're going on across, there's a spring down there. We called it Albina Spring. Albina. Yeah, she lived back over in there where we had tobacco when my husband died. You know where that little mud hole used to come across the road down? Well, that comes out of spring. And that's right in the back of the field we found.
Oh, yeah.
It's between where my house was and the highway over here. There's a spring over there, good spring. And we used to tote clothes from all around here. Everybody tote clothes. Big sheets, clothes, tie them up, put them on your head and tote them over there to that spring. Now, everybody had to wash pots, the tubs and rub boats and whatnot over there. Well, everybody didn't have them because everybody couldn't afford them.
I bet that was the time.
Whosoever owned them, they were down there to use. If they were mine, you just didn't use my stuff on my day to wash.
Right.
You had to wait till I got through washing before you could wash.
Now, what about the times when they made the soap? You know, I remember making the soap
I made soap.
You didn't leave the soap down there, did you? Did you
leave
the soap down there?
Soap was up to the house.
Oh.
Now, how'd you make that soap?
You get you some lye. You used to sell potash in bowls in my childhood. And the outside was rosin, pure rosin. And you could take it in your hand, it didn't waste your toe. But whenever you broke that rosin over to that white stuff, that was the potash. And I've seen my mama take 2 bowls of potash, put it in a wash pot, and dissolve it. Build a fire under the wash pot, and dissolve that potash. And she'd take all the old soap grease, all the old fragments for pork killing, you know, and she put it in there. And cook it until the potash eat up every piece of that meat. There wouldn't be you couldn't find a string in it. Then too, I remember when people used to go out with cows and see all this was old. Oh no fence law. And cows would run out in the woods, you know, and die. You find a cow, it'd be just the people would be just as busy watching that old carcass when the buzzers got through with it. And them old bones looked like they was about dry. Oh, I told it a many sack of bones, old cow foots and cow legs and cow hips and whatnot. And you take them and take the axe and chop them up. Put them in that wash pot out there and build a fire. And boil them. You'd be surprised the grease that come out of them bones. All right, they take all the bones out. heavy bone. They take that out. And they put the potash in there. And cook it. If there was enough grease, if there was enough potash to eat up all that grease, well, then you know your soap was too strong. You'd have to scrap up a little more grease to put in there, kind of take up the potash. And I learned with my family, I learned how to make soap right in there on my stove. All the old fish grease, I'd save that, clear grease. And I would take my lye, dissolve it in a nylon pan in hot water. I'd take my grease and put it in that pan while that lye was real hot. And I just take my spoon and stir that grease in, I pour the grease. Use the potash, heat up the grease. And I made bar soap, man.
Well, that old soap looked like octagon soap.
I made, when people killed a cow, everybody was at the tell. I read this nigga cow guts as I ate whole guts. Getting that cow off. And let me tell you something else. Them cow chillings is just as good as the whole chillings. They're better. My mother showed me how to cook everything when I had 11 children. I told her, I said, you ever seen anybody eat cow guts? She said, they're the best thing you ever had. Mama, no. I know it's a hard time. I said, but it ain't. Time ain't that hard. She didn't pay no attention to me. She fixed them chitlins, put salt on them, and everything. And I'm gonna tell you something. The day before my 11th child was born, I almost ate up all them cow guts out the pot from the children. They didn't get nothing but gravy. Them the best chitlins I ever tasted in my life. And I was stoning my mother. I said, who you ever seen? She said, when I was coming up, you didn't throw away nothing like this. You see, I didn't grow up then, and I'd see people throw away cow guts. We'd get to try it, and whatnot. But in the foots, and I've seen my mama make us get them foots. You see, they throw all that away. The cow head, too. Get them foots where they butcher them cows and bring them up there. Now, a cow foot have an oil in it. And that oil is good for more than one thing. And children used to have whooping cough. You take that cow foot oil, cook it out to where you want no water in it. And it's just as clear. And you put it on the bottom, and you save it. You had children with the whooping cough. They took it just like they take cast off. Yeah. And they rub with it. And a little baby, you take a cloth, kind of thick cloth, and wet it in that meat foot oil, they call it, and put just a slight of kerosene in. Not very much. Then you didn't make no difference how much turpentine, because turpentine don't blister.
Oh, really?
Kerosene will blister. And soak that cloth in. And just pin it on the baby's shirt. And if he had any chest cold back there between his shoulders, sneeze it out. It would come out in hunks. Cough it up. Spit it up. And never had no trouble.
About asthma.
That's acid reflux.
No, asthma. Didn't they used to have a remedy or something? You go out and if a child had asthma, you find a tree and put the nail to the height.
My granddaughter, Mildred.
Yeah.
Once
she was. Once the child outgrows the nail point, the asthma would be gone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tell us about Mildred, how that happened with her.
Oh, Mildred was, she had asthma when she was 3 months old. We carried her, me and my husband carried her to doctors everywhere. Well, she still had the same thing. And so we just finally quit. Somebody come along and told us about this tree, this live tree. I always was, I tried most anything one time. And I carried her out there. She didn't know what I was doing. She was a little girl. I backed the other side of the tree. Pine tree sitting in my yard over there. It wasn't nothing but sap in there.
Right.
And I took a brand new needle and started it in this bark, and then I had her move because I didn't want to knock her inside. And I drove that nail in the tree. And until when she got up to the nail like this, I went there and I drove it again. And when she got up over that nail, I drove it in. The nails is in the tree over there now.
Oh, it's still there, huh?
She don't have asthma anymore.
No, she's in California. She don't have that.
We were talking about, the other night, when you all were maybe 12 or 13 years old, you worked for this company. We were debating the name of the company. You were selling glass.
Lee's Manufacturing Company.
How old were you then?
Oh, I was about 11 years old.
Lee's Manufacturing Company.
They used to ship the goods in barrels, wooden barrels with shaving. It was dishes, glasses, tea pitchers we called them now. We used to call them water pitchers. And big old bowls.
Was that a company here in Alachua, or?
No, they was in New York.
Lee's Manufacturing.
A white lady, Rebecca, was always so ambitious. She worked for her, and my mother bought a lot of stuff for her. And Rebecca was so ambitious, she told Rebecca that she would make her agent. And so she did. And she made Rebecca her agent. And we ain't had no way in the world to carry nothing nowhere but us. We'll took a tub, a 10 tub, zinc tub. Well, very many of them, all of them, tubs was wood tub. Take a barrel, saw it in two. You had 2 tubs. And you cut your handles in there. You had good grip handles in them, and wooden tubs. But once in a while, you'd have a 10 tub. And when you had a 10 tub, you took care of that 10 tub just like you took care of the pot you cooked your grits or rice in. You see, that tub didn't, that tub was for one thing and one thing only. Yeah. Now, when you had something the tub was too heavy, the wooden tub was heavy by itself. If you had rice mark toast, you put in the 10 tub. So the tub was light, so you didn't have, most you had was what you had in it. I mean, her have told you. The tub, we'd sit down and rest. It's so hot. You'd get her shade to a shade tree and sit down and rest. We used to, the mules to live in orders. And we
All
packed
around
them.
town here,
Well, a long time. Out in the bushes, out in the country. Now, people that didn't have no way to come and get their stuff, you see. The nearby people. We just load up that tub and
walking.
deliver.
Did they have the money when you got there?
Oh, sure. They know when the order come.
Oh, they know.
They was notified when the order come, and they know to have the money, because if they didn't have the money, we couldn't send the manufacturer his money. And if you didn't send the manufacturer's money, you see, that was trouble right there. You had to make it up some way. And if there was a piece broke in shipping, you didn't pay for that. The company made it good.
How did they come into town? In the mail?
Hmm?
Did they mail it to you?
No. Come by free.
On the
You had to go down there and lug it back.
Yeah, no, they had to go down there. Well, we'd catch somebody. Somebody had a mule wagon. And we'd get somebody, pay them a quarter. They go by there and pick it up and bring it to your house for you.
Do you have any of that old glassware around anymore? Is it all gone?
Let me see. Rebecca got a little green kitchen bowl somewhere, huh?
That'd be fun to see.
Yeah, it would be.
I would see.
Yeah,
Now-
she's bringing it around.
You need some help?
Now this is the shape of pictures.
Oh, stuff like this.
Oh, it'll be this much larger. This
Oh,
is just a little small something. I don't know where she come by this at.
Uh-huh.
But this is the kind of stuff
Uh-huh.
that we sold. And the big bowl go with it, matching bowl.
Like a porcelain, something like that.
Well, I don't know what you call this. See, I call
Well,
it.
that's not too old
Some
there.
people-
That don't look very old.
But that's not the original one.
No,
You don't have
that's
any
not.
of the original.
No, I don't have one
The
of the
original was
original.
real heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're heavy. Yes, sir, they're heavy. A long time ago in hotels, well, no motels, that was chambermaid's job. Keep those, just like you come down, boarding house they call it. You rent that room tonight, your pitcher of water, your towel, and they used to have something they call a washstand. It had a round hole in the bottom. That's where the bowl sat, and the pitcher in the bowl. The pitcher was full of water. There was a towel rack on top of that washstand, washcloth, and when you get up in the morning, you didn't have to come out here. You pour your water in your bowl and wash your face and hands. And of course you had your slop jar in there to pour your water in. And when you get through wash, and well, that water in the pitcher was good to drink too, you know. And if you wanted water through the night, you didn't have to come out to get none because the pitcher was full of water and there's a glass sitting there. Get ready to brush your teeth, and you get to the washstand and wash your face and hands, and brush your teeth and comb your hair. There's a mirror up there. And all of that. Well, the chambermaid, that's what she did. When she come in, all these rooms that had been slept in, she'd get all them, and there was lamp, one on electric lights. Lamps. Get all them lamp skimmers, bring them down and wash them. And clean them out. Take them back up there and put them on the lamps. Take that bowl, wash it out. That pitcher was filled back up with fresh water. And sit back in that room. The next fellow come along, he didn't have to use what you used. See, there was first, if you use these towels this morning, all the chambermaid said, take out all these towels, take them down, put up fresh towels. The lamp chimneys was all clean, the bowl in the pitcher was clean, the bed's made with clean linen.
Now, were there boarding houses for blacks around here as well? Are you talking about? Or are you talking about for hotels for
What?
white folks?
What about the building across town we used to call the old humdinger?
Oh, I still remember now.
That was
You see that was all that come out from back, way back down here.
You can come around.
Around Asbury. That's the shards, the Richards. They when they began to come up here and get land, they was part of these rich people. And that's Tipper Shaw.
That was his place.
I'm from.
Was that a boarding house?
Right.
That was
It's still
the
it's still there.
The first boarding house.
Let me ask you a couple more questions about recipes. That interested in me. What other kinds of things could you do with turpentine? Now, you mentioned it for the baby having a cough. Was turpentine pretty common in recipes?
Oh, yes.
Turpentine and sugar for what?
What was it used for?
Kidney trouble.
Turpentine and sugar for kidney. Right.
And we had the backache. And I tell you something else. You don't see it now much because they ain't in pines around. But when this pine tree gets scant like this year, you notice that tar run out there. By next year, it'll be white. It'll be just as white. Now, I've seen my mother go to the tree and get that off. Oh, she'd have a ball big in this. And I don't know what all she put in it, but I've seen them mashing up something and put in with that turpentine and mix it up. And then she would take soda, cooking soda, baking soda, and roll it up. Make little pills. And if you had any water trouble, you take 2 of them pills a night. And take you one in the morning. That's always been my trouble. But when I fell last November, that was my trouble, so the doctor said. I didn't know it could hurt like that. But this side hurt. And right now, that leg and that foot is dead. It never woke up. It hurt so bad for 24 hours. When I got up the next morning, I got out of bed to go to the bathroom. And I fell. I couldn't stand on this foot. And I went to the hospital. And they said it was inflammation in my bladder. But I've always had bladder trouble. Now, after I had 14 children and was operated on, they corrected my bladder. Now, I never had no more water trouble. Well, water didn't bother me so much then. But as I started to tell you about these pills, the rosin pills, it would, my mother used to say that people's kidneys got wormy like whole kidneys. I don't know whether she knows it or not. But she has said that. And those turpentine pills would kill those kidney worms. And I know people that stayed in Mama's house sick a week in, a week out. And I've seen people come there with down in the back. They couldn't get up. They couldn't turn over. And she'd make them up some of them pills. They began to take them pills. And of course, a few days they would be up where they could sit up. They could, walk around. I said, she doesn't walk.
No, that's Beauty. Get on, Beauty.
Now, how about a lot of people have high blood pressure? Was there a recipe for that?
No, when I was growing up, I never heard that.
Oh, really?
I never heard. I did that after I was grown. I had all my children and everything. Never heard of a heart attack. Yeah, I haven't heard of heart attacks, but it was always not like it is now. It was always a heart attack. Always come in a shock. Somebody would be shocked, and I guess they called it a heart attack, and died. Just like if, just like all of a sudden again, somebody come in here and shoot somebody down, and somebody had a weak heart. I reckon that's the way they had it. That's the way they said it. Well, they would just go out and they never had no way of surviving, but blow in the face and beat them and, do what little they know, pour cold water on them or something. Well, if it was too severe, you see, of course, then they say, well, it's a heart attack.
Now, how about say children's problems?
Strokes.
Well, like chicken pox and measles.
Oh, I had all of that.
What kind of recipes did you use for those sorts of things?
Well, now when you got the measles, you ain't got a thing to do. Go out there and get you some shucks out the barn.
Some shucks?
Shucks off the cone, dry cone shucks. Put them in a pot and boil them. Make a tea, put your little sugar in it. Then get to it if you want it cold. You drink it hot. Then
So make a tea out of those shucks?
Not shuck tea. And you give him a cup of shuck tea tonight and put him to bed. You see the temperature gonna rise. When you get up in the morning, he's measles all over. Or you can take that green moss. It'll do the same thing. If you think he got the measles, you just get you some green moss and boil it. Give him a tea, and it's not bad. It don't have no bad scent or bad taste or nothing. And get ready to go to bed, let him drink it just as hard as you can get him to drink it. Put him to bed and wrap him up. Next morning, you might, if you want to put a little sugar in it, put a little sugar in, a little Epsom salt.
Now, how about kids that have worms in their stomach? Was there a recipe
Well,
for that?
now, my mother did that. She doctored on children with worms. I've known her to see her get worms from children. I never did do that to my children.
Do you remember the recipe for it?
No, I don't remember the recipe for the worms.
What about, say, older people who have, mental problems or something? You know, they get a little crazy. Was there anything you could do for
I
them?
tell you what, when I was growing up, I never hear telling nobody going crazy, just out the blue sky. That's the young generation doing all this. And that's the fulfillment of the Bible.
How so now?
We are living in the reveals of the Bible. We're living to see things that we older people have been reading about for years. I know I have.
Like what? Give us some examples.
You see, all them 260 people got killed in one. Right here in Alachua. If 2 people died in this settlement during the 12 months, oh, that was bad. Oh, that was awful. Nobody got killed on the road. Most people died. There was people that was lynched.
They had lynchings here?
Oh, they lynched 2 women right here in the road.
Newberry, wasn't it?
Right there in Newberry.
Newberry.
Friends, I know. I grew up with them.
Well, that was that wasn't in slavery times.
No, that was 1916. Who the hell you?
Oh, really?
You is young age.
I am. That's true.
1916. Oh. Out in the settlement called Jones there. See, that mostly was Negroes. One or 2 white.
Yeah.
White people had big plantations, and Negroes, fill up the plantations. And
why did they lynch them? They're women.
Well, I'm gonna tell you. There's always been mean people. There's always been dishonest people. There's always been, nasty people like that. Now that ain't new, but it's just more of it. See, we had them back in 1960. Well, some of the black people stole some of the white folks' hogs. They butchered the hogs. And I think they trailed the people to this man's house. The man's name was Boys Long. He had a wife. I think the baby was about 2-3 months old. And it was a man. He had a wife and family. And he took up with another outside black woman. And she had children for the outside black woman. Well, nobody paid her no mind, black nobody. She was just somebody living. And but this man called to be preaching. And nobody respected him. And nothing. But, he wore that name. So, Josh Baskin, people didn't like things like that like they do now, shucking. People, white and black, didn't have no taste for that. Man that had a family was running around, laying around with some old outsiders, and bringing all that shame up. People didn't want their children either. You see, my mother didn't allow us, They lived right across the field from us. But they were just as strange to us, as stranger than you are. We saw them, we treated them nice when we met them, but, associating, We didn't do that because they didn't have no respect for themselves. They didn't respect themselves as human. See, that's the way, I guess, they thought, had it feel. Well, Josh Basket and this woman had these children. They said that he was into this hog stealing because when he took care of his family, his wife and children, well, he had nothing left. He had to, what he stole, he carried the outside woman. See, he had to steal, scrap up what he could, you know, trying to make things, I reckon, all right there. And boys along, the high sheriff of Gainesville.
What was his name?
George Wynn.
George Wynn.
George Wynn. He was the high sheriff of Alachua County. We lived on his place about 7 or 8 years, on his sister's place. One deputy, when they come into Boys Along's house, the police is surrounded the children. They're living in a little hut, one door, one way in and out. And, when they come, it was at night. He had a high-power rifle. And when they opened the door, he opened. He killed the high sheriff, one of the deputies, and wounded 2 more, and got away. He got away. Then, that made the white folks mad. And they went out there. And they got his wife. And got his sister-in-law. And got Josh Basket. It was 3 of them. 2 women and a man. Now this was afterwards. I think this was sometime about Thursday night. This killing was. And Saturday, they got them people from Cadam. There's a highway through there now. The name of it is Lynch Hammer. They took those 3 people down there. The white folks gathered out there. And, they had a necktie party. One of these women was pregnant. And the other woman had a baby at home, breastfeeding. And this man, Josh Basket, him and his woman was home together, not his wife, his woman. Then they had the horses out there. They made the hanging ropes, went up in the tree, confined the other end, put them people up on horses, and put that around their neck, and then they would hit the horse and let the horse run out the money. When they got ready to hang this so-called preacher, I guess the white folks thought they was having fun or something. But anyway, they told him, say, all right, you call yourself a preacher. Now the man that my mother used to live on, used to work for his family a long time, and I brought his last children in the world. He was very wicked. And they say he told him, say, all right, Josh Baskin, says, you claim you know so much about God. So you better, if you want to pray, if you got anything to tell him, you better tell him now. And they tell me that man fell on his knees out there in that Lynch Hamilton in the daytime, at that time. It was dark. It was so thick, isn't it? It was plumb swamp. And you tell me that man got out there and prayed. Now, this white man told us in his lifetime. And that man prayed until as dark as it was in that Lynch house. Now, old man Jim Davis told us. He says, dark as it was. So when Josh Baskin went to calling on the Lord and praying, he said that hammock lit up just like it was daylight. And when he got up, he told him, said, white folks, whatever you want to do, said, do it right now. He said, I'm ready. And when they cut Josh Baskin down, man live out here on the other side of Gainesville. He ain't been too many years died. Now, this is what was told to me. They said when Josh Baskin was jet black. He was just as black as the pants you got on. He said he was going to cut a strip out of his backbone, skin, hide, and make a cracker for his cowboy. And he stooped down and did this. And I saw him since 36. I met him in Gainesville. And he never straightened up no more. And he lived to be an old man. I looked at him. And he was just this way.
Just like that?
He walked that way, he sat down that way. He couldn't no more straighten his back. And I know he went to doctors, hospital, but to tell me when he took his pocket knife and cut that strip out of Josh Baskin's back, to tell me he was never able to stand up no more, straight.
Well, who would do the taking down, you know, when they had the pension?
Well, some people traveled on Saturday morning and come through the building. They had to come right, the dirt road, nothing but a rock road, right through the hammock. And they saw those people hanging. They went down and told the sheriff in the building. If they didn't take them people from hanging down upside the road, if they don't have Newberry wiped off the map, there wouldn't be nobody in Newberry. And this woman had, after she was saying, well, they said it was a bunch of women. There's people traveling and saw it. And they told them it was a shame for a human to do other human that way. Now, I was young, but I remember Governor Katz, he broke up the nigger lynching right in Alachua County. Governor Katz. He was a little man, but I'm going to tell you, he was an old man. And he didn't stop at one town, one station. He walked the streets and preached. And he told the white folks what it was. So you cowards, bunch of cowards.
And when was this? What?
1960. Governor Katz won the governorship. Must have been 1917. But Hunter, that little man, he was a little man. But he told it to big sticks. He stopped these white folks from lynching. Stopped them from lynching. So y'all, one man do something, you take it out on the family, say it's wrong. Say you're a bunch of cowards and a bunch of murderers. Say you're thieves. Now he had one of them things talking to it. Walking the streets of each little town and village to them. That's right. When we went to Live Oak, you tell me you did the same thing. Yeah, Live Oak, Florida.
Well, where did you go to school then?
Who?
You.
Me? Right there.
The St. Matthew's Church?
So had the church right in the school?
Oh, well, we didn't have school.
Well, just vice versa.
Right. So
We didn't have a school. You see, there wasn't a school in Alachua. When was this school built? Now, in 1936, I had the year, anytime. And I'll tell you who you could get that from now, I believe. William A. Postel. Because Jack Postel is the foundation of ACT. He used to walk from here to Gainesville, making arrangements, and facing them people over there to get us a black school in Alachua. Newberry had a black school. High Spring had a black school. Alachua didn't have that. We teach school in old houses where people won't live in the paper.
Who would teach? Who would be the teachers?
Well, anybody that completed 10th grade.
But did it tend to be like the pastor's family or any particular family?
Well, there's some. I went to school under a man. He was teaching in an old outhouse between here and High Spring, going right in High Spring. But it was nearer to High Spring than it is here. His name was Professor Lee. He teach reader.
Really?
Professor Lee learned me how to write. And he learned me how to count.
So
He was an old man. He was so ugly. Oh, but I'm going to tell you something. He had a head on his shoulder. And he had a good education. I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't know where he come from. He come from South Carolina or Virginia or somewhere. But anyway, I know he was an old man.
one thing, Leatha, we don't have a lot of tape left, but there was one story you told the other night about how you got your family name, and I thought that was kind of nice. Maybe you could tell us again, because...
Well, that was, that come through slavery. See, this old Frenchman, now that's what they told me he was. They say he come from across the water.
Now this is your husband's...
Grandfather. And he hired himself when he come over here to the Mitchells.
Now where was that? Here in Alachua?
No, that was in Georgia.
In Georgia?
Thomas County.
Thomas County.
In Thomasville, Thomas County, Georgia. And he hired himself as a hog raiser. He was a great hog raiser. And of course, you see, the white folks over here didn't know. They didn't cater to him so much. So I just assumed this now. Nobody told me. They had, they gave him a little hut down there where the Negroes was, you see, down there near the Negro quarters or something. Well, he had no association. He couldn't go up there. Come on. You wake up? He had a good little nap in there. They didn't associate with him. And he had no association. No, nobody associated with it. No. I guess this is my husband's grandmother. Well, she was part Indian. And then I guess he associated with her. And this is when Mose come about. And he was the father of Mose. But Anne and Helen, she married after Mose was born. And she married, plantation married. And she had 2 girls. Want to go in the bathroom? And these girls was not Decoursey's. He wasn't the father then. Those was her husband's children. Now Mose was the odd child. See? And he was the oldest.
And Mose was Decoursey.
Mose Decoursey was old man Major Decoursey was Mose Decoursey's baby. See, he was white. Now, my husband's father, his hair was more the color of hers, and skin, eyes, and everything. He was the picture. And well, They said he, you know, they called the Indians and the white folks was mixing up back there.
Mm-hmm.
And they called him half-breed, you know. And this name was so, I reckon, strange or something. But anyway, he never did deny that Moses was his son. Right. He never did deny that he was with Mary. Because I think it was kind of fad at that time. You know, people didn't pay no attention to it. The Indians and the Negroes and the whites and the whatnot. And that's the way it come about. So that's the way he got his name. So all of the coasts, there was a regiment of them in Tallahassee. They tell me when, this was what I heard. And when he left Thomasville, he went to Tallahassee. And he had a child in Tallahassee, a son. And this tooth finish used to be over in Gainesville, the Bowes. He married old man, Major Decoursey's granddaughter. She was a Decoursey before she was married to him. His son was a Decoursey. Her daddy was a Decoursey.
Oh, yes. Dr. Cosby's.
No, it's where Dr. Cosby is now, but it was the Bowes at that time.
Right, that's right.
He fell dead out in California. He went out there to see his son and had a heart attack while he was out there. That was in 51.
Yeah, Leatha, I don't know, just to kind of wrap things up. Now, is this your granddaughter here?
No, this is a friend of mine.
Our tenants, one of our tenants, little girl. We just
Her mother there. Her mom and daddy went to work this morning, and
she's as cute as she could be.
I
love her hair.
Cute as a book.
Yeah. Listen, now, if you were, wanted to tell something to her about how to live a good life, and when she gets older, I think she'd want to know a little bit of your wisdom about your own life. Maybe you could say it now, and she might get to look at this.
Beginning with truth. Now, my mother, she didn't have an education, but if you brought a lie, that's this baby's granddad.
Oh yeah.
You paid for it. Old boy, you paid for it, though. And if I picked up anything, if it was in the road, and brought it home, I would have to give strict account. Whose house was it now? Whose yard was it in? She didn't allow us to bring nothing home if we couldn't tell how we got it. Then we could say, we found it. Well, where about? Now you hadn't, children had a hard time. They're running around down the road. And if I have found a nickel or a dime. And my mama didn't believe it. She didn't believe it. And you know what she'd do? Take it from me and put it up. Say, if anybody come here, and say, Miss so-and-so, sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so, if he said, we come by his house, say, he lost a nickel, this is nickel. We got to give it back. Now, honestly, I found a nickel in the road. It was out in the little dirt pad. But she wouldn't take my word. If I was somewhere near somebody's house.
The nickel belonged to them.
Yeah, that was theirs. And don't accept nothing from nobody to eat or to bring home, and except where it comes from. Because if another child stole something and wanted to get rid of it, before he catch his family, well, he can get me out there in the road and he got something, then you can have it. See? Well, I don't know. See, I'm glad to see it. Glad to get on to it. I don't know why he getting rid of it. But you see, we couldn't carry nothing home like that.
How about dealing with other people? That seems to be another thing that you're awfully good at, and that's
dealing with other people. Make sure within yourself that you are right. You have no other fear. That's all you need. If you're right, it don't matter about who else is wrong. You just make sure you're right. Yeah. And then what other people say, what they do, it don't bother you. You know, you might say, well, I didn't think they would do that or something of the kind. It don't cross your mind. But so far as, you know, I'm going and see about that. I'm going to get at him. I'm going to get at her. You don't want all that. What kind of mess is that? You can't straighten up nothing. If somebody said something about me, I ought to have sense enough to know if this is a lie, they're not going to tell me to my face. So why me go there and make them tell another lie? Yeah. If I'm told one lie, that's enough. They could get through paying for that, and then they'll have enough. So don't worry about that. But let your life speak for you. And from the time I was 16 years old until this morning, I'm living the same life. First man I ever accompanied with, I married him. Stayed with him 40 years. Had 14 children. He died in 52. I ain't been married no more. I ain't had no company. I ain't been out nowhere. I ain't been riding with nobody. I ain't been... No, I haven't been taken out. The first time that I was taken out to dinner, my son, the preacher that lives in Pompano, he came up here. And usually every time he come home, he'll take me out, take me to church in the morning, in the afternoon, take me to dinner over to Morrison. And then this past Mother's Day, after Hayward passed, Hayward's son, the only one he got living, he came here and took me and Rebecca out Mother's Day to dinner. I haven't went to a party, no kind of party, but a church, since my husband died. I've never been to no ball or to a dance, what they call now, in folk true. I never went out on Saturday night, Friday night, Sunday night. I never went out. Never has had a date out. Because my husband married me when I was 16 years old. He was the first man that ever walked with me, took me out of my mama's house. And, well...
How about in terms of this town now? It's been hard living here.
Oh, yes, it was
What kind of
hard.
advice would you give people for the future here in
Well,
town?
for the future now, and the way the world is, and the people has changed in this world, you see, we had no supermarkets. We got supermarkets now. You go in the store and you pick up what you want. And then you go up to the counter and you pay for it. You see, there wasn't none of that back then. Whenever you went in the store, you say, I want a nickel's worth of coffee. And the man would weigh up your nickel's worth of coffee. What else? And you said, nickel worth of grits. I've got a lard, nickel worth of lard. You get enough lard for a nickel back there to last you almost a week. Just one nickel. But he dipped it up out to concern and put it on a tray and weighed it, wrapped it. You got it.
Where do you think Alachua will be in the next 20 years? What kind of place
Alachua
will it be in the next 20 years?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I believe, my husband used to tell me this before he died. And he said that Alachua, it would be hard for Alachua to ever pull up. He said, nah, I won't live to see it. He said, but Gainesville and Alachua, before the end of the world, just might meet. It'll be just one time. He said, but that's the only way Alachua is going to pull up. is for these three places you have to meet. High Spring, Alachua, and Gainesville. He said then, because seemingly, they said, you may think I'm playing, but I know when we had hitching posts in Gainesville. And water truck, hitching posts for the places for the wagons and places for the horses, tie the horses. Yeah. And when I married, that's what was there. People was going, traveling, and horse and buggy. And now people used to leave right from here, going to Gainesville. They had coat. That's what I remember about laws. When they'd have coat, and the men, the white folks that would had to sit on jury, you would see them early in the morning. You'd hear the wagons cluck cluck. They was going to Gainesville to sit on the jury. You see, and they had to do that. You know, they had spring coat and fall coat. When I was coming up, there wasn't nobody in jailhouse. The people that was in jail, there was people that had murdered, and they was waiting on the time to hang them. Yeah, they didn't. The jailhouse was packed. The prison, they had to hire free labor. They didn't have enough prisoners to work the prison for.
What do you think about black folks and white folks in the future?
Well, I feel like that the nation is coming together. Not my generation, but this generation down under me, below me, and below that. And you see, my children do things I just ain't never been used to doing it, so I don't do it. And it's no harm in it, but I don't do it because that ain't my way. But I think, from what I can discern from my children and great-grandchildren, they are learning that the skin of people doesn't make a person. See, it's all right to be black, that's all right. Well, you white, that's all right. But you are no better than me, and I am no better than you. And it don't mean that I must lay down and let you whip me just because me and you different colors. It don't mean that you lay down and let me whip you just because I'm a different color. I got power over you. Well, you see, people is learned, and they come into knowledge. Nobody owns nobody. You see, that comes way down that was handed down from slavery. You don't own people. People is think you own your hogs and cows, dogs and puppies. You own them, they belong to you. But a human, they got their own mind. We all come from the same man, woman. We don't read the Bible where God made but two people. That was even out. Now, I'm told that it was a curse put on the black race. That's in Bible history.
Well, there's other
Noah got drunk. See, Noah got drunk. He celebrated and he was so thankful to the Lord that him and his family had come through the flood. And he drank so much wine until, it was more than he could handle. He got drunk and pulled off his clothes. And one of his sons went and looked at him and made fun of him. And the other two took a blanket and covered the fire. And I'm told that that's where the mob come in. That he was told, your children shall be hewers of wood and drawers of water for your brother's children. And I'm going to set a mark between your brothers. But I'm going to set a mark between them. I'm going to darken your seed. Your seed ain't going to be the same color your brother's seed. So, what can we do about that? There's nothing. And people is beginning to learn there's nothing to do about it because anything God hasn't fixed, it's useless for you to put a hand in. God intended it this way. And sure, I think I do as much respect as anybody else. That's providing if I demand it. But you know what? Respect is something don't just come to you. You have to demand that. That means stand in one place. And not only let this fella know that you're standing there, but all that's around you, let them know where you stand. I don't move from here. Because I'm black, it don't make no difference. I got just as much right standing in my place as you is standing in your place. That's the way I feel about it. I should think just as much of myself as she think of herself.
Exactly.
She's a lady. I'm a lady too. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we better end the tape. You want to fade out? That was great. Went on a little bit longer than I expected, but it was just so interesting listening to you.